Folks, if we could all take our seats, we are going to start promptly at 10 o'clock. We have a number of people streaming in from near and far, so we would like to begin very promptly. If we could take your seats and quiet down, a few more are still registering and we'll trickle in, but we definitely would like to get the program started and certainly get you out on time. Welcome. My name is Christine McMahon, and I'm the CEO and president of FedCap. And I look out at this audience of more than 400, knowing that there are over 80 people who are on a waiting list who intended on coming today. There are groups of stakeholders gathered at the Moore Center in New Hampshire, at LifeShare in Florida, and hundreds of others have logged in from across DC, New York, across the US, quite frankly, and even in other countries, Europe, New Zealand. I was told just a few minutes ago that someone logged in from Britain. I am awestruck. Today there are 6 current or past commissioners involved in this event. Some of them will be up on the stage before the event is over, and others are tuned in remotely. This is clearly an important and relevant conversation, and I do want to welcome and thank each of you for joining us, and most importantly, for believing that this issue is worthy of your time and attention. Today with this group, we really don't need to make the moral case that we must change the outcomes for youth who leave our child-serving systems. We know the numbers are compelling. The clear and indisputable reality is that far too many are simply failing. They're failing as young adults and in critically important life domains. And if we only consider that 70% of youth in our system say they want to go to college and only 10 enroll, and of that 10%, only 1 to 3% make it through, we can surely hear there's a call to action, and an urgent call. And after all, what we're talking about here is opportunity loss at a significant magnitude. And when we look beyond these statistics to the rates of homelessness, joblessness, and the pervasive sense of hopelessness that can be a daily reality for far too many, we begin to understand the depth of the problem. Interestingly, we know quite a bit about youth in our care. We know a lot about their experiences. We know that any significant time in care as adolescent impacts brain development. We know that too often kids in care lack stability and a strong, loving relationship with adults that last forever and unconditionally. We know that youth in our child welfare system and juvenile justice systems are subject to low expectations for academic achievement, and very few are ever told they can go to college, have a good life, and maybe even achieve greatness. And I think you'll agree when you meet our panel today that greatness is what we... Uh-oh. We know that a great majority of the children in our care grow up in very poor households with no visible path out of poverty. We know that many have suffered abuse or neglect within their own families, and that this trauma has changed the way they see and respond to the world. And that what we see as a result is that youth have a different and have difficulty making meaningful connections with adults. We know that youth who leave our child-serving systems need and most often don't have someone to turn to at times when things get rough, and undoubtedly they will. Traditionally, we move quickly to the fix, more services, more money, and yet our answers really haven't gotten us to where we need to be. This panel, our speaker, our focus today, it will make clear that hope is vital and knowledge is critical. This conversation is less about quick fixes and more about an invitation to listen and think again and again, and to reject the notion that the fight is too hard, the system too complex. Today we ask each of you to embrace this challenge, understanding that what we are searching for are accessible solutions to specific problems, and that once identified and understood, they can be solved. It's about envisioning a different future. These young people that you'll hear from today, our keynote speaker, Judge Gray, who herself, a 9-year-old in this system, should emerge as the face of those for whom we envision a different future. The children in our care are intelligent, they have promise, and they will make significant contributions to our society if given a chance, and they are worth our effort. Our effort to rethink our assumptions about what we think we know, our effort to realign our priorities with their experiences in mind, and our efforts to reshape what we do with and for them. And maybe what we need to do today is to suspend judgment, put aside assumptions, shift perspective, and try to see this problem differently. Maybe what we need to do is listen to the experiences of those who know the system best, those who have experienced it directly. And then maybe we need to let that guide our questions and our understanding of those questions. And then we begin to see a different story. That's the focus of today. And if we begin the story at a different place, and maybe at a different time, we write a different ending. Maybe when we start when the child is 5 or 7 or 10, and we had different storylines, and we focus on building a system of different outcomes. Outcomes like strong relationships that support growth and achievement. Outcomes like a college education, satisfying careers, financial independence. And that's why we're here. We can write a different story, a story of hope, high expectations, a story of aspirations and achievement. And today, we can begin that story. So let's begin that story today. Thank you. I would like to invite our hosts from Rutgers, Andy and the Dean, who I'm sure are no strangers to most of you. Dean Paddock both are coming to the stage to welcome you, and I understand there's some housekeeping issues they want to address with you. So enjoy the day, the morning, and I look forward to hearing your feedback when this is over. Thanks.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Rutgers. Welcome to the Bush Campus Center. On behalf of the Institute for Families at the Rutgers University School of Social Work, I welcome you here today in this room, as well as those of you who are joining us via the live internet stream from around the world. Welcome. I have a couple of logistical announcements. First off, I realize that we have had a parking issue here this morning for some of you. And I want to just announce to you, if you have trouble with parking, you receive a ticket, anything like that, please contact us at the Institute for Families, and we will get that taken away. I can't help you if you're watching us from New Zealand or from the UK if you've had a parking problem, but I can do my best to help you if you're here outside. So please follow up with us on that. And additionally, on your seats this morning was an evaluation form. I think there's also the same form inside your folders. One of the things we're trying to do with this event is gather a significant amount of data and responses from those of you who are participating. So if you could take a few moments at the end of the event to fill that out, it would be really helpful to us to keep furthering this dialogue. And I want to also let you know that you can ask a question of our youth panel, and you can do that by way of sending an email, and you can do that from your handheld device, or if you're watching us live, you could send an email to us. And the address is askthepanel@ssw.rutgers.edu. That's ASKTHEPANEL@ssw.rutgers.edu. So please send in your questions, and our youth will be responding to some of them a little bit later on. And now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce the acting dean of the School of Social Work here at Rutgers, Dr. Kathleen J. Potic. Dr. Potic was appointed acting dean on July 1st of 2011 by Rutgers President Richard McCormick. Dr. Potic's appointment as acting dean is well-deserved. She's had 3 decades worth of experience here at Rutgers as a professor, both conducting research and teaching and being a part of the community here in New Jersey and beyond. Dr. Potic's research and her work focuses mainly on the area of mental health, and specifically in understanding the barriers to the provision of effective mental health services for children and adolescents and disadvantaged populations, and on developing strategies for removing such barriers. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dean Kathleen J. Potic. Thank you.
Welcome. This is an amazing day. All professions, whether they be medicine or law or nursing or business or public health, ministry or education or social work, have 3 characteristics in common. All professions have a technical body of knowledge and skills. Professionals have special expertise which distinguish them from other professions. Second, all professions are institutionalized, meaning that they provide ways of belonging to the professions. Professionals go for training in special schools, have their own codes of ethics, and their own professional organizations to which they belong. Third, all professions have a service commitment. The desire to serve is perhaps the most distinguishing feature of all professions. Dr. Blake, who I have the distinct honor to introduce, is an extraordinary professional, skillful, knowledgeable, driven by values of inclusion, self-determination, and respect for others, with a strong commitment to serve. Dr. Blake was appointed Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Children and Families by Governor Chris Christie and was confirmed with a unanimous vote by the Senate on June 21st, 2010. For nearly 30 years, Dr. Allison Blake has been working on behalf of children and families and the social workers who serve them. Prior to beginning this service, Dr. Blake was the director of our own, Rutgers' own School of Social Work, Institute for Families, where she oversaw a portfolio of grants and contracts aimed at strengthening families by building the capacity of individuals and organizations that serve them. Importantly, she also served as Vice President of Accreditation Operations at the Council on Accreditation, an international organization that develops best practice standards for public and private organizations that provide services across the continuum of care. As commissioner, she has emphasized an integrated and strategic approach to serving children and families in the state. She has focused on a community-based, family-centered approach to service delivery throughout the work of the entire department, ensuring the inclusion of parent and youth voices in the department's planning and quality improvement work. Dr. Blake earned her bachelor's in social work from the University of Dayton, a master's in social work from Rutgers University, and a PhD in social work from Fordham. We are proud to call her an alumna of the School of Social Work and delighted that she is joining us today to lend her vision for changing the story for disconnected youth. May I introduce Dr. Allison Blake.
Good morning. Thank you so very much, Kathy, for that warm welcome. I'd like to first thank all the sponsors of this event for bringing us all together for this very important discussion. And I need to say that I have these very talented staff who often will prepare suggested remarks for me, and I have a tendency to not always follow the script. So, and I'm going to veer a little bit off today as well. And the reason for that is because I've spent the last 2 days in Washington, D.C., engaged in a very similar discussion that, which really, convinces me that this is probably the most important meeting and discussion happening in New Jersey right now. So, over the last 2 days, I was in Washington with a group of public child welfare leaders, child welfare advocates, and policymakers, and 4 young adults who had received services from our formal systems across the country. This was probably one of the most meaningful discussions that I've ever participated in because it also was focused on changing the story and really kind of thinking about reframing our work with youth as opposed to, continuing to think about, substituting judgment for youth and, protecting them, but really thinking about how we work with them in order to change the story and really, most importantly, to change the outcomes. So I learned a number of things during this 2-day meeting, and I want to talk a little bit about that before the program actually begins. So you all have a program announcement that has a quote in it that I'd just like to read to you. And it says, "We have a powerful potential in our youth. We must have the courage to change old ideas and practices so that we may direct their power toward good ends." So we have a powerful potential in this room today. My understanding is that there were 400 people here and that there were hundreds more that were on a waiting list. And so I think that it's unanimous that we all understand that we need to work differently and if we're going to be successful in changing outcomes for the youth who receive services in our systems. And so some of the things that, that we talked about when I was in Washington over the last 2 days, I'm hoping will resonate with all of you and will help guide some of the work that we'll all be doing going forward after we have the opportunity to hear today's panel discussion. So some suggestions that I received along with my colleagues about how we change the story was the notion of authentic engagement. We have a tendency in our programs across the country who, that work with adolescents and teenagers to really, say, oh, we do positive youth development. We engage youth, right? And, what that actually usually equals is we invite them to offer some welcoming remarks in an event, but it's very rare that we invite them to participate in our policy review and policy implementation in our organizations. It's rare that we invite them to actually be part of the development of training curriculum for our staff in residential centers, in foster homes, and even in the public child welfare agencies. It's rare that we offer them a seat at the table when we're talking about the changes in policy development and program development, and so if we really mean it, all of the adults in this room, all of the professionals in this room, if we really mean that we want to change the story, then we have to get real. And that means that, we have to engage, we have to practice authentic engagement and not just pay lip service to what we call positive youth development by saying we're engaging with youth. Secondly, something that I thought was really very meaningful was the idea that language matters. We have a tendency in the formal systems to label the people that we work with. And so we talk about foster youth. We talk about classified children. We talk about abused and neglected children. And it seems to me that what we really should be talking about are youth who have experienced foster care, or youth who have experienced disruption in their permanency plans, or youth who have experienced trauma or exploitation. So, the notion that we're not labeling the youth, that it's not about the youth, but we're talking about the systems and the services that they've been exposed to and what the impact of those systems and services have been. So, lastly, I think that just as importantly for the adults in this room today is the notion of what social capital really means. And understanding that when we talk about social capital and we talk about family and peers and our community and schools, that we have to understand when we're talking about that in relation to the youth that we work with, we have to talk about that from a perspective of normalcy, right? So, you know, I'll tell you that our system, like many other systems, when we have youth who are in foster care and they want to go sleep over a friend's house, well, we have to do a background check before they can do that. That doesn't feel normal, right? So, or when we have youth who move from placement to placement, we're all trying to improve our systems, and you know, but still there are youth who do, you know, do wind up having multiple placements, and so they go into these programs, and we have something that we call contact lists, which are the people that they're allowed to talk to on the telephone. And so maybe what we ought to think about, right, is that there's nothing normal about having a contact list, right? None of you, when you go home, have a contact list, right, for the people in your life that have been significant and have had healthy relationships with you. And so we really have to think about maybe reframing that and having a no contact list, right? Who are the people that it would not be healthy for them to talk to versus the friends that they've made in prior programs or prior placements. So, you know, I could, you know, stand here and give you many, many examples of the things that we could do to change our system. But I think that what's really important is that if we're going to change the system in New Jersey and across the country, we have to really do that with youth at the table helping us think about that and really learning from their experiences as opposed to, you know, the experiences that we think they're having or what we think their level of input should be. So I can tell you that in New Jersey at the Department of Children and Families, we are committed to changing the story. We, 2 years ago, we elevated what was a DIFAS Office of Adolescent Practice and Permanency to a department-level office focused on youth transitioning to adulthood. And we then engaged the very expert services of Rutgers School of Social Work to develop a strategic plan for change. That, you know, we took several days where youth were at the table with us, there were parents at the table with us, there were professionals, whether they be service providers, those from the courts, those from the schools, but really creating an opportunity to talk about what was working, where were the gaps in services or just in the way the systems connected or weren't connected to each other, and what could we be doing to try and move that work forward and change the story so that we could achieve better outcomes. So we've just implemented that plan, and many of you in the room are actually have been part of that process and will be part of the work we'll be doing going forward. And so we're committed. We are committed to making this, to changing our practice and really to changing the outcomes for the youth who receive services from our system. And so I challenge all of you to really listen today. But beyond that, I ask you that as you go forward in the work that you do, that you practice authentic engagement. That instead of developing policies for youth and rules and regulations, that you take a step back and you invite them to the table to help you think about what really is in their best interests and in the best interests of the youth that will be coming into our systems in the future. So I thank you all for making the time to be part of this discussion today. I hope there will be an opportunity for future discussions about this. We won't solve all of these challenges today, but I think we can make a lot of progress. So thank you and enjoy the day.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Roque Gerald. I'm the former Commissioner Director in Washington, D.C., and currently the Director of Washingtonians for Kids, which is a division of FEDCAP, and glad to be here for this momentous occasion. I will be introducing the Honorable Judge Pamela Gray, but I just wanted to say that I'm really privileged to be surrounded by Judge Gray as well as two of my former Directors Youth Advisory that really helped me directly in addressing some of the issues we are addressing today. Washingtonians for Children is really focused in exactly the way that we are to ensure that youth coming out of the system really have a real chance of success. Judge Gray, I'll be reading more formal her bio, but I also wanted to say that during my time in the District of Columbia. I formed a very strong relationship with the judges, but Judge Gray far surpasses that. We have become very good friends. We have a mutual passion that's just burning in terms of making sure that every one of our children and all of those who we have oversight are our children really succeed no less than our own biological children. And we have taken that to heart. The Honorable Pamela Gray is Magistrate Judge in the Family Court of the District of Columbia, Superior Court. Since her appointment in 2002, Judge Gray has presided over abuse and neglect matters. She's presently serving as the Family Treatment Court presiding judge. She joined the District of Columbia Public Defender Service in 1990 as a staff attorney from 1990 to 1998. She represented indigent district residents in the Family and Criminal Division of the Superior Court. Bachelor of Arts degree from Montclair State College and a Juris Doctor from Rutgers University. So she too is an alumna. Welcome, Judge Gray.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Gerald, for that introduction and for inviting me to this very important event. If I could just say a few words about Dr. Gerald. He is one of the true champions of children and families. There's this saying that I know we've all heard, it takes a village to raise a child. And in child welfare, I think you all know that that village is the child welfare agency and all the social workers and the administrators and policymakers. But in DC, under Dr. Gerald's leadership, it was not only the agency, he understood that agencies cannot operate in silos, that the agency had to partner and collaborate with other agencies and organizations and the court, with the private sector in order to effectively provide services to children and families in DC. And so he was a great leader and one that I truly miss. And so, one disclaimer, I'm not a public speaker. And looking out at the masses of folks here this morning, I'm nervous. And I have to say that when I learned that 400 people had signed up for this event and that there was a waiting list and that there would be people viewing this event from other venues, struck a little fear in my heart. But I also really felt pleased that so many people care enough about this issue and about our children that they would take the time to come and hear from us. And so hopefully there's something in what I share with you today that will help you understand the life of a child in foster care and what helps us to overcome some of the barriers and some of the things that happen in our lives to allow us to get to a point where we are successful. For me, this really is one of life's full circle moments. I grew up not too far from here, few short miles, in Franklin Township, in the New Jersey foster care system. And if someone had told me 30 years ago when I was, well, actually more than 30 years ago, but you all don't have to know that. But if someone had told me when I was raising absolute hell in my foster homes that I would be standing before a crowd of social workers and policymakers and administrators and students interested in social work, and that I myself would be a family court judge working with children in foster care, I would have laughed. Because my life as a child was such a mess, and I raised so much fuss that I didn't have a vision that I could be anything. And so I'm truly honored to be here today with you all and so many people who do care and are committed and dedicated to children in foster care and making a difference and making changes. And so now I go to my prepared remarks. The reality is there is a lot that is being done today that's good. There is progress, significant progress being made to improve outcomes for all children in the child welfare system. Child welfare agencies are working hard to prevent the removal of children in the first instance, working hard to strengthen families, engaging extended family members and friends early in cases to support families and children, and when necessary, to serve as placement resource. Agencies are working harder to identify and locate fathers early in cases and working to return children to their parents much faster to minimize the harm. They're also working very hard to ensure that young people develop lifelong connections, and in some jurisdictions, they're actually extending the time that children in care from 18 to 21, allowing young people more time to mature and prepare for independence. However, we're all here today because we know that there's still a great amount of work that must be done, and especially for our children who are transitioning out of foster care. According to some data from the Adoption and Foster Care Analysis and Reporting System, the number of children coming into care is decreasing, and that's important and significant. But over the last 5 years, the number of youth aging out consistently has increased from 7% to 11%. And some data shows that nearly 30,000 youth are aging out of foster care each year, and most are undereducated. Many don't have a high school diploma or a GED. Most lack employment opportunities or marketable skills. Many are homeless or have inadequate housing. They struggle with early parenthood, involvement in our criminal justice system or our child welfare systems because of their own children. They struggle with substance abuse, physical and mental health issues. We remove children to keep them safe, and yet we return them to a world of homelessness, poverty, and hopelessness. And this is nothing short of a crisis, and you all are a testament to the fact that many people care and understand that this is a crisis. And I'm pleased that so many people are committed to making a change. And so today, the topic is changing the story for youth in transition. And I was asked to share my personal story as well as offering some thoughts about what we can do to make those changes and what I see in DC as best practices. For many people who grow up in foster care, and even though I'm very far removed from my years in foster care, opening that box of memories is hard, is challenging. So I would ask you to bear with me because I still get emotional when I think about growing up in care. But I came into care because my mother was an alcoholic and my father spent some time in prison. And my mother would leave us for days on end while she went out and drank. And she would leave a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old in the care of an 11-year-old for days. Child welfare did become involved, and they threatened to remove us. And so she stopped leaving us alone, but she started leaving us with the neighbors. And these neighbors had children of their own, responsibilities of their own, and so often what my mother would do was split us up. So at a really early age, I experienced not what the foster care system can do to you in splitting you up and moving you around, but my own mother in splitting us up and moving us around from neighbor to neighbor. Eventually, the neighbors tired of caring for her children while she went out and drank, and child welfare came in and removed us. The blessing for me, if there is a blessing in being removed from your family at an early age, is that my younger sister, my baby sister, and I were kept together. And she was 3, and I was actually 6. And like our other youth that are here today, you feel some responsibility for your younger sibling when you're the older person, when you're the older child. So I felt some responsibility for her. But it was a blessing to be with her. It was a blessing to have somebody who I loved and who loved me. And so we clung together, and through move after move, we were at least kept together. My brother and my older sister and my mother and my father was actually years before we saw them. And so in the beginning for us, there were no sibling visits, there were no visits with our parents. And my sister and I did not learn until we were adults that we had relatives who didn't live that far from us, aunts and uncles and grandparents and cousins. And we wonder, even to this day, when we allow ourselves to go to that place and have conversations about our lives, we wonder why they didn't step up and step in and save us from the foster care system. But for years, we were moved from place to place, and typical of moving in the 60s, and I understand that it's a current practice today, we were moved in trash bags. Not us physically being placed in trash bags, but our few precious belongings were placed in trash bags, and off we went to the next place. And for me, as I got older, I really began to feel like I was trash, like I was nothing, like I really did not matter. And I often wondered, throughout all my years in foster care, what I had done to deserve this life. I wondered why I didn't have that person to call mom and dad when I would go home, as my classmates did. And I didn't engage in conversations in school about what went on in my home. And so when kids would come back from a vacation or from a holiday and they'd talk about what their mom did or their dad did or their grandmother, I didn't engage in those conversations because I didn't have a mom to talk about and I didn't have a dad to talk about. I wondered why God would create a child that no one loved and no one cared about. And I started hating myself. I didn't like myself. And that self-hatred turned to acting out behaviors. And so when I say I was a bit of a hellraiser, I was. Nobody cared about me, and I didn't care about anyone. And I made it absolutely clear. And so I'd talk back. I'd do the opposite of what I was told to do. I gave the teachers hell in school. I didn't study. I didn't try. I didn't know I had any potential to do anything. And I really didn't care because no one, in my view, in my world, cared about me or loved me. One of the things that was pretty prevalent back then that has changed from today is that there wasn't the oversight and monitoring of foster homes. And so we lived in places where there was a substantial amount of abuse often. There was physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. There were times when I was locked in an attic. There was times when we were deprived of food. There were regular beatings. And there were times when we would get blamed for things that the biological children had done, but we took the beatings for it. And so as a child, I could not see tomorrow. I could not imagine a day without hurt and disappointment and pain. I could not imagine a life without rejection. And I also felt a deep sense of fear and a deep sense of shame. I felt that there was something wrong with me, why my parents did not want me. And I felt that if other people knew that I was just a foster child, they wouldn't like me. If other children in school knew that I was a foster child, that I was damaged goods, that they wouldn't want to be my friends, that they would not like me. And one of the things that occurred when I turned 14, I went in search of my mother. And by that time, my father was out of prison, and he was back on his feet. And he was actually a hardworking man who loved us and who did engage with us. We saw him every birthday, Easter and Christmas, but he would always tell us that he could not raise 2 little girls. We didn't have a relationship with our mother. We didn't get birthday cards. We didn't get Christmas gifts. We were not acknowledged at all. And in my world that I created, I decided that the system, the foster parents, the social workers, other people were keeping her from me. And that if I could just find her, it would all be good. Things would be better. And at 14, I ran away, and I did find her. And when I found her, what I found was more hurtful, I guess, than what I had experienced in my various foster homes, because she really wasn't interested in being a mother, and she wasn't interested in me. And I understand today, because I do work with women who are addicted to substances, that it wasn't my mother, it was the substance. But at 14, I did not understand that. And so I went back to foster care and back to my foster family. I tell you my story not so that you'll feel sad for me or hurt for what I experienced, because the reality is, for me, I have a great life now. And those experiences in those times are way in my past. And unless and until I'm asked to open this box and talk about it, for the most part, I don't. But I shared my hurt and my pain, which is still very real inside of me, with you today, so that you understand that the children you serve today, the children that you work with, they experience some of those same things, some of those same indignities, and they feel some of that same hurt and that pain and that anger. And I know from what I do every day in court that they will cuss out a social worker just as fast as they would, cuss me out, and they have. They will cuss out a foster home. The anger is misdirected. It is not you. It's not the foster parent. And there are some wonderful foster parents. Foster parents are the agency's or child welfare's greatest asset. So not everybody mistreats children. There are some loving homes, but there is so much hurt and there is so much pain, and I couldn't find a way to express what I was feeling. Social workers back then didn't talk to the children. They came and they talked to the foster parents with you sitting there, and you couldn't tell them what was going on. And frankly, for my sister and I, as we got older and we had moved around a little bit, we feared what the next home would be like. And so to complain about where you were, not knowing where you would end up, it made no sense. It was useless. The children today, they act out, they're angry, they're hurt, they don't study, they fight back, they do all of the things I did. I have people today say to me, oh, I would have taken you in. You wouldn't have been able to handle me. You would not have taken me in. You would take this person in, the person who has the degrees, the person who knows how to respond in anger and knows how to have a conversation and listen and hear. I wasn't that person. It took a lot of time, and it took a couple of angels for me to come into my life and to allow me to see that I was worth something, that I wasn't damaged goods, that I wasn't unloved and unwanted. And the first person to come into my life and make a difference was my 10th grade home economics teacher. Her name was Miss Bradley. And home ec. Go figure. I mean, I shouldn't have been raised in Kane and home ec. We're eating, we're cooking stuff, we're having fun. But no, everywhere I went, I was a problem. I'd walk out of class without permission. I'd talk back. I had to be the class clown. I was everything that many of you see if you're working with children today who are in care. But Miss Bradley wasn't having that. And she knew that there was something more. She knew that there was some potential. To this day, I don't know what she saw in me. I don't know what drew her to me and to say to me that, you know, you're going to be involved and you're going to make the meals that we make and you're going to eat them and you're going to enjoy them and you're going to be a part of this class. You're not walking out of here and talking back to me. And it was Miss Bradley who helped me with the SATs. It was Miss Bradley who helped me identify Keene College. And I actually didn't think about Rutgers because the memories of this area were too strong and too negative, and I wanted to get away. But I applied to Keene. I applied to Rider. I applied to Montclair State, which was then Montclair State College. And I applied to some schools outside of New Jersey. And it was Miss Bradley who applauded me and cheered for me when I was accepted to Rider and Keene and Montclair and Clark College in Atlanta. And she was the person who helped me to realize that I could be something more. Guidance counselors were telling me, you better get a vocation. You're not college material. Guidance counselors did not encourage me because my grades weren't good. I hadn't performed well. But Miss Bradley from 10th grade home economics monitored what I was doing and encouraged me and knew that I had the potential if I just applied myself and studied, which I did. I also had the good fortune of making a friend of a young lady who moved to my school around the same time that Miss Bradley took an interest in me. And she did not live with her parents. She lived with her grandfather. And so there was someone like me and someone who I could talk with about some of what I was experiencing. And that really helped me greatly. And so for our young people today, we have to encourage them, we have to scold them, we have to love them. They need to know that they're okay, that they're good people, that they have good qualities. They need to know that they're worthwhile and they're loved and they're beautiful and they're smart. Things that you all, if any of you who have children, probably tell your children every day. If they come home and someone has hurt their feelings or they've had a bad day, you probably tell them you're beautiful and you're loved and mommy loves you and daddy loves you and you can do anything you want to do and that person just doesn't know anything. And when you're growing up in foster care and you're just, you know, a paycheck, which I felt I was, you don't always hear those things. And I did not hear those things. And so very, very quickly, because I'm probably running out of time, but some tips for those of you who work in the field, those of you who foster or who adopt or whatever you do to work with children in foster care, one of the most important things is to treat us as you would want to be treated and as you treat your children. The one thing that angers me, and I'm very sedate today because I'm nervous, all of you are looking at me, but in my courtroom, I'm in charge. And the one thing that really bothers me when young people come to court, and you know, all agencies have their problems, and there's never going to be a situation where everything works perfectly for every child in care, and there are going to be some problems. It's just life. It's, you know, there are problems with people in this room may be experiencing, but there never should be a time where a child who is in foster care who needs to go to the dentist has to wait months. I have a son, and any complaint he ever had as a child, we were at the doctor's office or the dentist's office. And even today, if he calls me and he says, I'm not feeling well, have you gone to the doctor? They shouldn't have to wait. They shouldn't have to wait for the clothing voucher to get clothes. Your self-esteem and how you feel about yourself is already so damaged by being in foster care in the beginning. And if you're walking around looking like nothing, a ragamuffin, frankly, hair undone, no decent clothes, then you don't feel good about yourself. You feel like you are, the reason they put your stuff in a trash bag and move you is because that's all you are. And so one important thing is it should never wait. If you wouldn't do it to your child, don't do it to our children in care. They need something, move mountains to get it. I have social workers, and Dr. Gerald probably doesn't know this when he was a director of the agency, but I have social workers who will come in and they will say, "Judge, order it, because I'm not going to get it unless you order it." And I get that pockets aren't deep, and that's why this is not an agency issue. It's not a child welfare issue. It's a community issue. In collaboration with everybody, the private sector. I mean, for policymakers, businesses, for tax breaks should be made to employ our children, should be made to provide some internship opportunities, services for our children. It should be made to do something. Faith-based community partners should be made to do something to help our children and our families. But the first rule of thumb is if you wouldn't allow it to happen to you or your child, don't accept it for our children in foster care. Communicate with your children. Talk to them. Our kids know when you show up, whether you are the guardian ad litem or the foster or the social worker, and you show up a week or two before the hearing. They know it's not about them, and it's all about the judge, and it's all about being able to say, I visited the home and I talked to the child. Children want to know that somebody cares about them, and the social worker really becomes the parent. You really become an important person in that child's life, and you cannot help it if your agency moves you and changes your caseload. But while you're on a case, treat that child like he or she matters. Communicate, talk to that child, learn their interests, show up at their basketball game or track meet, show up at that play, show an interest in what they're doing. That's important, and that will help them to begin to trust again. Be honest with them. As a child, I probably needed Miss Bradley to say, you're not doing that here. Other teachers would send me to the principal's office, or they would ignore me, or they would do other. She wasn't going to allow me to get away with running her classroom or disrupting it. Children want discipline. Children want to be told, you're better than that. You can do this. You're beautiful, you're bright, you're smart. I'm not having that nonsense. Stop it. They need to be told that, but they're only accepted if you are there in the good times and the bad times, and if you listen to them. If they tell you something is going on in a foster home, something is going on. Don't out them by going to the foster parent and saying, she said whatever. There are discreet ways of finding out what's going on, but find out and fix it. Empathize with the children. I live with my childhood every day. I don't pull this stuff out to speak about it, but there are times when I'm hearing stories in my courtroom where I'm moved to tears. And I don't mind crying on the bench. I don't have a problem, because this is very personal for me. What happens to our children in their lives is very personal to me. So being honest with the children, empathizing with the children, letting them know, you have had experiences in your lives, maybe not child welfare, but other things. Maybe the loss of a loved one, maybe a marriage ending, or things have happened that allow you to know what it feels like to lose someone, to be hurt, to feel pain. Understand that that's where this is coming from. It's not ever personal when they curse you out and jump out your car and tell you they're not going. It's not personal when you show up to take them someplace and they're not there. It's the anger, it's the hurt, it's the disappointment. Remember that change is hard for our children. And when you show up to move them, or when you show up to talk with them about the 30-day notice that you've received from the foster parent, or the notice you've received from the group home because they no longer want the child there. Change is hard for that child. Even though I acted out and I caused things to happen, I didn't want bad things to happen to me, but I didn't know how I didn't know how to communicate with adults. I didn't know how to communicate with the system. So understand that change is hard, and moving them from place to place where they then move from school to school, where they then have to try to make new friends and fit in, it is hard. If you think about, for those who have children, sending your child off that first day of school to kindergarten and leaving them, well, every time you move a foster child, we're experiencing that. But nobody's grieving leaving us in that place. They leave, and maybe 30, 60 days later, they might check on us. It's important to involve, and this has been said, youth in planning for their own lives. And I love Dr. Gerald because he did that in DC. Planning includes the education, linking our young people to significant adults, helping them to grow and learn about healthy relationships, and you are that first healthy relationship if you're a social worker. Because if you are there for them and if you respond to them appropriately and if you listen and hear them, then they can speak and they can learn to talk and they can learn to communicate without yelling and screaming and cursing or simply shutting everyone out. Using the children, as Dr. Gerald did, one of the amazing things that his young people who are here today, one of them did, was change the name of the program that helps our young people with emancipation from Keys for Life, which I kind of never understood. It's like, what are the keys for life? But to the Office of Youth Empowerment, empowering youth, giving them a voice. And he did this not only through offering them an opportunity to come in and work directly with him and his staff on what are your needs, how can we help, but his door was open. I have a couple of young people on my calendar who miss him greatly because they could go in when others could not get in the door to talk to him about what needed to change in the system to make it better for them, to prepare them for emancipation. You cannot take a child, and I guess in Jersey we still emancipate at 18, but you can't. Fantastic, that's wonderful. But in '73, when I emancipated, it was 18, and I literally got the word that my birthday's in February. My birthday was a couple days ago. That when I turned 18, I was out of the system, and that was that. And so the check stopped, and you were essentially homeless unless you could stay with the people you were staying with, or unless there was some place that you could go. And so back to what is going on in D.C., or was going on, and I hope it continues, under Dr. Gerald's leadership, they also instituted these, I call them town meetings, I don't know what they were really called, but meetings where policymakers, judges, social workers, the young people who were able to figure out and envision their future and knew what they wanted, and young people who didn't have a clue could come together and talk about what's working and what's not working and hear from young people about what needed to happen in the system. And as judges, we could hear what was working and what we were doing right and what we were doing wrong. And social workers could hear that, and they would have these meetings. We haven't had one since you left. But that was an important forum for all of us to hear from the young people. Therapy. Therapy is important for young people. I wish there had been therapy for myself and for my sister and other children. Now, our young people are not going to just go to therapy. My kids tell me all the time no, but there are some innovative therapists who get how to talk to our children. It's not on the couch, it's not in a room, it's not behind the closed doors. They take them out. They go out and do community projects. They might help clean up Anacostia River. They might go to the movies. They might go to a play. They may go to a ball game. And in those settings, children start talking about the concerns and their feelings and what matters. They're not going to just tell you in a therapeutic session what makes them sad. If you don't know that being in foster care and moving from home to home and not having your own parents and maybe being separate from your siblings makes you sad and angry, then you shouldn't be a therapist. Probably shouldn't be a social worker. So having them come in and sit down under those circumstances, that doesn't work. But taking them out and talking to them in settings outside of an office, that's how you're going to get them to talk about what matters to them and how they're feeling and how they can find that place, that box that I have to put those feelings in so that they don't interfere with my progress, so they don't disrupt the things that I need to do. Foster youth and former foster children are huge assets as mentors, peer mentors, adult mentors, because the reality is this: we've lived through it, but I'm not going to let any child who appears before me or who I mentor get away with saying, I can't. I'm not going to allow them to allow that anger and hurt and pain to consume them and not realize their potential. I know what can happen if someone takes an interest. I know what can happen if you open a book. I know what can happen for them. And my grades were horrible by the time I was in 10th grade. I was working from D's and C's and had to, junior and senior year, do a whole lot of catching up to allow colleges to look at me and say, yeah, let's take a chance. Don't discourage, encourage our children. None of us got here because we were so smart or we were so bright or we were so beautiful or we were so perfect. We all made mistakes. And they will too. They will make mistakes and they will stumble. And they have to know that you get back up and you try again. I'm going to stop. But thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. And I hope something that I shared will help you in your work. And I really, well, again, it is just amazing to have so many people sitting in front of me and listening to me, and it's scary. I am so honored that so many of you really do care enough about children in care to be here today and to come out in the rain. Thank you.
I don't know how I follow that at all. Judge Gray, you've been introduced already and we've heard your story, but I just need to tell you, and I'm sure that you know this, and I hope that the court system in Washington, D.C. understands what a true asset you are to that system, and a partner, truly a partner with the youth and with the entire system. So I thank you for sharing your story with us. Okay, now at this point in the program we have our youth panel, and I'm going to introduce each panelist one by one, and then they can take a seat in one of the comfortable chairs down there. And their bios are all in your program, but these are some impressive people, and so I think it's worth We like that. That's great. And she'd like to work on child welfare reform. She's an active member of the Foster Care Alumni of America, Foster Care to Success, Child and Family Services of DC and CASA. Next, Antoine Wood. He entered the District of Columbia's foster care system at age 5 and will age out this year in July. In 2010, he was president of the Directors Youth Advisory Board with Dr. Gerald at the Child and Family Services Agency of DC. He spearheaded the development and implementation of a Youth Bill of Rights that became policy in the district's child welfare system. He's a student at the University of the District of Columbia, and he's an accomplished photographer and entrepreneur, and looks forward to being a member of the inaugural cohort of FedCap's Washingtonians for Children. Antoine. Next is Tony Conover. He moved from foster home to foster home from the age of 3. Tony is one of our own here at Rutgers. He's a senior with a double major in political science and philosophy. He plans to use his knowledge to combat socioeconomic disparity. He shared with me yesterday that he may also be interested in an MSW degree, which, again, we like that. He's the president of the Rutgers University chapter of the NAACP, president of the New Jersey State Conference for Youth and College Division, and Region 2 National Youth Work Committee representative. Welcome, Tony. And I'd like to re-invite Judge Pamela Gray to be part of our panel. Judge Gray. And our moderator for today's panel is William Waldman, who's currently executive in residence at the Rutgers School of Social Work, one of my colleagues on faculty. Thank you. For those of you who don't know Mr. Waldman, he served as commissioner of the Department of Human Services here in New Jersey under 3 different governors. And he was also the executive director of the American Public Human Services Association. This is our panel, and I welcome them to the stage, and we will have a chance for questions and answers in a little while. Welcome.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for my panel members for joining us today. Let me start out by saying that if we will ever change the story for disconnected youth in this country, we will need individuals like Judge Gray with her passion, with her vision, and her insight and her knowledge. So, Judge, thank you for inspiring us today. We heard this morning the stories, the outcomes that can happen to disconnected youth in our country in many, many ways. But last evening, I had the delight of having dinner with some of our panelists, and they told me very inspiring and encouraging stories about how they are changing, how their lives are changing the story for them, that I think we all could learn from. So I'd like to begin by perhaps giving each of them an opportunity to talk about their story and to draw implications for that for all of us as to what we could learn. Let me begin with Julissa.
Hi. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. I am 22 years old. I spent 10 years in the California State foster care system. I was put in the system when I was 8 years old. I was taken from my drug-addicted mother and separated from my 4 siblings. I lived in about 6 homes. Excuse me. I lived in about 6 homes. I changed schools every time I moved homes. I want to say it wasn't until my 3rd movement when I realized that that shouldn't have been my life. I didn't want it to be my life. So I found kind of a safe haven in school. My books were always going to be there. Words were not going to change spellings. 2 + 2 was always going to equal 4. And with that being said, I just knew that education was kind of the way out. I knew that by receiving an education, I wasn't going to have the life that led me into foster care. I just refused for that to be my life. So I worked extremely hard through high school, through college, just so that I can have the opportunity to provide for myself, to one day be able to give my children what my mother failed to give me. My emancipation, it was bittersweet. I was done with the system, but I didn't really know what was next. So after I emancipated, I made my way to Washington, D.C. for school. My freshman year, extremely difficult. I no longer had the support of the system. I no longer had the support of foster parents. I had no siblings. I didn't even have the possibility of reconnecting with family. So initially, I was in DC alone. That kind of took its toll because it was just 18-year-old Jaleesa in DC by herself. The hard thing about it was I didn't really know what to do once I got to DC. There's just this little story that I tell everyone. I needed extra long sheets for my bed, and I didn't know that I needed extra long sheets for my bed. But I also needed to get my books for the first day. I didn't pre-order them. I didn't know I was supposed to pre-order them. So that night, I had a decision to make. Was I going to go to Target before it closed to get the extra long sheets? Or was I going to go to the bookstore before it closed to get my books for the next day? That seemed like it wouldn't have been a problem, that both tasks could have been accomplished in the hour that I had. But because it was just me by my lonesome, I did have to make that choice, and it was very difficult. And not a lot of people, especially at George Washington, had to make those kind of decisions because they can tell their mother, their father, their friend, their cousin to go get those sheets while I go get my books, but I didn't really have the opportunity. So I'm gonna go get my sheets. The next day, thank God, we just read syllabi, and we didn't use our books, so that worked out in the end. But little things like that no one would really ever think of made the transition that much more difficult. And I do feel like if I did have that supportive adult, that sense of permanency, and not necessarily an adoptive parent or the parent that I stayed in the house with for 5 years, just that one person that was there for me through my transition, through the times when I was feeling sad, then it would have made it that much more difficult. But through little situations like that no one really ever, think of to be a problem, I kind of lost my confidence, my sense of security. I kind of lost my purpose because I didn't feel like anyone cared, so why should I? I felt like I didn't have the potential. No one really told me I did. So my freshman year, I was really withdrawn. I fell into depression. A lot of the traumas that I experienced when I was a child surfaced. And I don't have anyone to help me navigate through those problems. And I think that was the biggest issue. Someone asked to kind of recommend what would have made my transition better. I would definitely say resources, or mental health resources for after emancipation. Because like Judge Gray kind of alluded to, is that foster youth don't really take advantage of the fact that we have, the therapy sessions, or that we can go if we want to. And I was one of those youth. I was not going to therapy. No one was shrinking me. No one was getting me to tell them anything about anything. But once I got to DC and I was alone, and I just realized that I was in so much pain and despair, I needed that therapist, and I'd have access to her. Another thing was just someone to help me transitional, something like a liaison. Because when I left California, California left me. It was just me. And I do feel like just a call every now and then to let me know that someone cared, that I was still on someone's radar, that I could go on despite the fact that my mother wasn't by my side, or despite the fact that I didn't have a mentor. It definitely would have helped me just keep on keeping on. I think last but not least, I think a lot of us know that the insurmountable effect that a mentor can have. And it wasn't until my sophomore year that I was given a mentor through LFA. And that's when I realized that I was someone, that I made it to DC because I'm supposed to be in DC, that I can do big things, that I can make a difference. And it was just her listening to me, just showing me she cared, just giving me that extra 10 minutes of her time that helped me realize that I could make it. So thank you.
Thank you. Tony.
How you fine ladies and gentlemen doing? I just wanted to point one thing out. It was really funny when that noise went off, everybody's head went. But my name is Tony Conover. I am a fourth-year political science philosophy major here at Rutgers University. I graduated May 13th, finally, out of here. I was born in Neptune, New Jersey, but if you ask me where I'm from, I'm going to tell you I'm from Willingboro, New Jersey. That's where I learned to be a mature young adult, and also where I learned how to, you know, be a bad person at the same time. I came into the foster care system at 3 years old. Me and my brother, Tim, we were the two younger brothers, and then we had two older sisters. My mom was on drugs, and of course, as most stereotypical minority families, the dad was a deadbeat, he wasn't around, so, you know, eventually child welfare caught up to us, tried to take all of us, but some of my family decided to take my two sisters, and I guess they felt, you know, two young boys, they can make it in the system as opposed to two young ladies. I would talk. Can y'all hear me? All right. Okay. Can y'all hear me though? Okay. So we ended up getting to the system. We got moved from house to house. We both had anger issues. I would say my brother's was a lot worse than mine because he was older. So the hurt, you know, he fought every house we went to. So in that case, my first foster home, I got hung off the roof by the lady's birth son. He literally hung me off of the roof, and I was just holding on to the little, I guess the drain pipe thing, you know. And my brother like finally figured out that that was me screaming outside. He came and got me. I've been beat a lot. I've been thrown downstairs. I've been forced to stand up in a corner for 12 hours. You know, I've been through a lot of abuse back then, and then I finally got into I would say a stable foster home. And as I had a lot of attachment issues, so it's like I didn't want anybody to adopt me. I didn't believe in adoption, but this one lady, you know, she really cared about me, and I was like, you know what, I'll let her adopt me. And right as we started to go through that process, she passed away. And so my brother was already kicked out of that house anyway, so he ended up getting adopted by another family in Willingboro, New Jersey. And I call her my mom because that was the person I was going to let adopt me. Her dying wish was that no matter what happened, that if she didn't adopt me, that they put me with my brother. And DIFAS honored that. They found where my brother was at, and they worked some things around, and I ended up getting in the foster home with him. He was spoiled. I wasn't. You know, me and my foster mom didn't really get along because I was outspoken. He was the suck-up, so, you know, he got what he wanted. I didn't, so by 12, I realized that I had to fend for myself, and I've been working since 12 years old, trying to make a little bit of earnings so I could afford the clothes, that clothing check that never came or came once every year that was supposed to come every season. You know, I learned to fend for myself, and I don't know how many of you guys are social workers, but I'm that foster child who you provide the resources and you say, I'm here for you, and I tell you, don't call me, and you don't have to come visit me. You have a big caseload, don't come visit me. I don't need you. You know, I'm fine. You know, just if you want to call me, you know, call me once, but don't call me a lot. I don't want to be bothered. I'm busy. And I believe that was a bad thing, but it was also a good thing. It helped me be independent. I got into a lot of trouble, and I will sum up my life very, very quickly. I am currently at the end of serving a felony term. It's not nothing crazy. It was a shoplifting term, but I'm still at the end of serving a felony term. And it was actually within my first year in college because I was under the impression that DIFAS was going to pay for college. And when that check never came and I got deregistered for classes, and anybody who's a Rutgers student knows how quick Rutgers will deregister you, and I couldn't get into my dorm, I was like, well, there's only one way this term bill is going to get paid, and that's if I, you know, go and perform something of stupidity. And I did, and my term bill got paid, but I'm still serving. I'm at the end of serving my felony term, and honestly, I would say that if it wasn't for Rutgers, if it wasn't for college, I would be in jail again. I've been in jail. It's not fun, and jail is nothing. At first, as the DIFAS youth, I realized when I got into jail, I was like, it's about the same thing, you know. It's just about, you know, there's a certain guidelines that you have to abide by, and as a kid in the DIFAS, in the child welfare system, we felt ostracized, you know. Like as a kid, you know, when people, I know, I can't remember who said, but somebody said about having to go through the background checks to go spend the night. How am I supposed to be able to say, you know, I want to come over, and then like I have to have DIFAS workers come to your house and check to see if your smoke alarms work, check to see if you got the right alarm, if you have enough room in your house to fit an extra child for the night. You know, the system definitely made you realize that you were not a regular youth. And since that day, I've made my passion to making sure that not only do I change how youth see the system, because I know that there are good things, but also so that the higher ups in the system, in the DCF, DIFAS, all of that, know that with your approach is not the best. And I will give it that, because now that I've met these two from DC, it's not just New Jersey, so that's a sigh of relief. It's not just New Jersey, it's the child welfare system in this country that needs changing. And I believe that when you reach out to youth like us, you may actually realize that a lot of the things you're doing really, really just don't work, and you're wasting a lot of money, and it'd probably be a lot more efficient if you just reached out to, you know, us. I'm currently the president of the Youth Advisory Board. My vice president is back there. You know, it's good to see him. You know, we try to make sure that the higher ups know, you know, this is how we feel, this is how the youth feel. We want you guys to, you know, listen. And, you know, I think we'll wait till the panel to talk about the rest.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. Antoine.
My name is Antoine Wood. I'm currently a 20-year-old college student majoring in communications. I came into CFSA, which is Child and Family Services in DC, at the age of 5 years old. Before I entered, my brother and I, which he's a year and a month younger than me, we were both homeless. And just looking back on that, that was difficult. I didn't know it was a problem until I learned some things. I thought it was just, you know, kind of a normal thing. I was kind of born into all this whirlwind of disaster and trauma. My mother, she was a rebel. She ran away from home, so it was no connection with anyone else. Neither, you know, did she try to make any other connection. And then, you know, very bad neighborhood, you know, drugs, violence, things of that nature. And then during the time I was homeless, I didn't know that I could eat food, you know, regular food, you know, turkey, salad, things like that, because I was never fed that. You know, I was very, you know, I was underfed. You know, I was the kid with the big head and skinny body. You know, how artists will often, you know, draw you. So that was an accurate description of me. So I would go to stores, you know, convenience stores, and steal bags of chips, because that's all I knew. So I was homeless for 3 months, eating bags of chips and soda. You know, so. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. So I entered into the system, you know, not knowing anyone, or besides, I've never seen, I don't remember what my mother looks like. I don't know what my father's look like. I don't have any pictures, anything. So my brother and I were going through the system, not knowing anything, try to find out information. There were secrets about us, you know, that we didn't know, which was confusing to me. And during transitioning, you know, like Grace said, you were moving trash bags, which is very humiliating. You know, I can deal with, over the time I dealt with, you know, moving from home to home, and, you know, okay, I was able to deal with that. But, you know, how it happened also was humiliating. Even if you didn't know I was a foster child, and then you see my clothes out on the lawn, me moving trash bags. So like, okay, you know, what happened, you know, from the inside looking out. So actually, we worked on that, and it's now in policy you cannot move kids in trash bags. You have to actually have duffel bags. So continuing on to, you know, transitioning from home to home, I've been in more homes than my age. There were years where I've moved 5, 6 times in 1 year. So I've talked to people and asked them, you know, how long they've lived in the house, and say, well, I've been here for 10 years or 30 years. I can imagine, you know, what that would be. You know, so each time I would move to another home, a piece of me would be left behind. You know, either some of my belongings were stolen, or I couldn't retrieve all my items. One day I came back from school, my social worker picked me up, and she said, I'll be taking you home. I said, okay, that's fine, I could use a ride. Come back, and all my stuff is on the lawn. So without any notice, I didn't, no one had spoken to me anything, and they said, I tried to get in the house, the door was locked, so I couldn't get in. There was lots of boys and other people living there, so they just had their way with my stuff, and I basically left with nothing. So I'd start over each and every time. And what I would say is that the hardest part is feeling as if you're disposable, you know, because it's this thing called a 30-day notice, you know, that you're given, and it's really used as leverage. You know, it's this honeymoon period when you first move into the home. You know, it's about 2-3 weeks long, and they say, "You're my child. I love you." And you know, I'm looking like, you know, isn't this, you know, this is not truthful. You know, I smile in your face. Okay, you know, I believe you. Okay, but then that's over, and this 30-day notice thing is used as leverage. It's like, you know, if I'm truly your child, would you really get rid of me? You don't just get rid of your child like, oh, I'm tired of you. You've made a mistake. Farewell with you. And that's how it's been. You know, we're held to higher expectations, and I think that's not fair. You know, that's not fair enough to put us up there, you know, higher. We basically have to be God and make no mistakes. But that's how life is. You make mistakes. It's a part of growing. It's part of the journey to adulthood. You know, if you make a mistake, it's okay. You know, it's a part of it. So,
That's great. Thank you, Antoine. In listening to each of you, including Judge Gray, you've all overcome extraordinary difficulties and adversities. And one of the common themes that starts to appear, and this has validated my own experience as a social worker, that what made a difference was the Miss Bradleys, your prospective adoptive mom at one time, the people who stopped and said, you know, you are somebody, you are special, we care for you. And that seems in many cases to make all the difference in the world. I wonder if you could perhaps share with us how that connection is made, how that adult engaged you, that maybe you could give us some advice and wisdom so that we ourselves in our work and our lives can make that kind of difference in a young person's life like yourselves.
I would say if it wasn't for a select few people, I would not have had the motivation to get out of the system that I was in, the path that I was going down. You know, I've had a lot of foster care workers or social workers. I can name 2, one of who's here actually, who actually I can honestly say cared about me and made me feel like I was more than just a case file, or I was more than just a youth that you had to come visit. And I'm going to give them their names out because they're wonderful, and just, you know, y'all might want to drop a dime at their office. You know, they're great people. My first worker, and he's like real young. He's like me, real cool. His name's Albert Swindle. He really reached out to me, and honestly, like, his first visit was the worst visit that we've ever had. He came and visited me at my school. Nobody knew I was a foster kid, but until he came to my guidance counselor. I mean, they knew, but it was embarrassing still that he was there. I cursed the storm at the guidance counselor when he left. Like, why would you let him come? Da, da, da. But he really stuck with me, and I talked to him today. You know, like, me and him really have developed a relationship that he's not. Once I aged out, he called me and said, now that there's no more professional platform, we're real friends. You know, call me anytime you come to my house. And the other person is Wayne Holmes, who's in the back. You know, he really reached out to me as well. He was my last worker. I was aging out, and he called. He made me really understand that, like, you know, maybe I am doing something really good here. You know, because I try to look at it. I'm very humble, so it's like I'm in college, and that's whatever. But he really, like, you're doing great. You know, we talk about you all the time. And hearing that pat on the back from workers such as that is what really, really helps people get by. Everybody needs that pat on the back, because as a foster care youth, you don't have that person that's biologically attached to you to always say, good job.
Great. Jalissa.
So, for me, I was assigned to CASA when I was 11 years old. At CASA, a court-appointed special advocate, they're just go to court, start your case, talk about what they think is in the best interest for the youth. But my CASA took more of a mentor kind of relationship. At the beginning, of course, I pushed her away. She was just a horrible person. I didn't understand why she was coming into my life. I didn't understand why she took interest in me. My own mother didn't want me, so why would this random person kind of take the time out of her life, out of her busy schedule, to expose me to things? A lot of the things I know now, she kind of exposed me first. She took me to things like Symphony. Yesterday at dinner, I was talking about, she took me to an opera. Don't really know the name of it. The Wife of Figaro and his sister, something like that. Something like that. I absolutely did not like it. But if it had, if it had not been for her, I wouldn't have known that the opera existed. And I think it's just through those kind of experiences where I realized someone did care. And not only that, she kind of realized the potential in me to do big things. Like I stated before, if I didn't know anything about opera, I wouldn't know people produce them, people trained to sing in them, people trained to dance in them. So it was through those kind of experiences where I realized I can sing if I want to. I can maybe dance, maybe produce, but I think it was just that helped me realize that if she could take the time, if she thinks that I can do something like become an opera singer, I can't hold a note, then I should believe in myself. I should govern myself accordingly so that I will be successful. So it is that kind of one person who takes that extra time to help you realize that you matter. And through her helping me realize I matter, I believe that she mattered. And because she mattered to me, I didn't want to let her down. I had to succeed. I had to be the person that she wanted me to be because she took time to believe that I could be that person.
Antoine, did you?
For me, there have been many people in my life, but no one that was really consistent, you know, because people are assigned duties, you know, and you do the best for your job description and things like that. And then once, you know, that job was over, then people would leave. People would say, you know, we'll stay and things like that. So it's kind of been on and off. So I kind of look to work to kind of, because I'm really big on financial security. And, you know, I have to have a comfortable house. It doesn't have to be the nicest house, but, you know, comfortable, because, I was homeless, things like that, didn't have any money. Roque Gerald has been awesome with helping me out, in these later years, though, so I would like to thank him on that. So yeah, it was just, working and connecting with people through work. I've been overseas and traveled, experiencing different cultures. Passport is full, so I had to get a new one.
That's awesome.
So that was basically it.
Excellent. You've all kind of indicated the importance of having an individual to connect with, but also listening. There's also a need sometimes for programs, for services, for opportunities. If you could think back in your own time, or what helped you change your story, were there such programs, opportunities, and services that led to better educational or employment opportunities that really made a difference for you?
For me personally, no. Like I told you guys before, I'm very independent. I would rather go, I taught myself how to interview, I taught myself how to write a resume, taught myself all of that. But what I will say is that at the end, when I was already done, I got put in order to get, I think they're called Chafee funds or something like that. I had to be enrolled in the independent living program. I'm like, listen, I have my own apartment, I have my own car. Why do I need independent living? But I didn't know how to cook, so that was my excuse to get into an independent living program. So I got into an independent living program. It's called Just For You. It's in South Jersey, and the lady who really, I would say, helped, and she's helping me now, even like getting my LSAT, GRE, and GMAT books. I'm trying to take all three. Her name's Juanita Henry. That program, Just For You, it really helped me hone in and realize I may not have all the skills I necessarily need. Having an apartment is nice, but having to order food every night is kind of expensive. So I would definitely say that was the only program. Actually, no, I would say one more, and it was because I was younger. It was Family Services. They gave me this mentor, and most people, I would say I lucked up because most youth I know ended up with an older person as their mentor. I ended up with a guy who was about 26. And his name is Kel Lundy, and he really, he still is my friend today. I'm lucky to always get somebody young. And I think that's one thing. If you guys want to take something about and think about your programs that you guys are funding, stop reaching out to people who can't really relate to what an iPhone is. So definitely, I would definitely say having somebody young, that's what helped me get that extra push.
Independent living skills did play a big role, but there were also other resources like Orphan Foundation of America and A Better Chance that played a big role into me getting into college and getting the school supplies and the books that I needed. But those resources a lot of them go untapped because a lot of foster youth don't know about them. So again comes the supportive adults who's going to take that extra 10 minutes to tell me that those resources are out there. That's kind of basically it.
Okay. Antoine, did you want
to? For me, it was school. But we go back to middle school. I was in middle school, and I was a little bit of a hustler, so I would sell anything I could. So back when gum was, 30 cents a pack, you have, 5 pieces, I was selling for 10 cents, so a 20-cent gain. So I would buy all the gum out the vending machine and resell it to everyone. So, I got kicked out for school because, I was also, had bad behavior, things like that. But, they were like, he has a mind of a drug dealer. He's going to be a drug dealer selling drugs and corrupting society and things like that. So they put me into an alternative school, and I was there for a long time. It felt like jail. I couldn't really get out, and I found out that it was supposed to help. So the goal to me is supposed to be get them through this program. It's kind of nurture them and get them back into regular school, but I found out that wasn't the case. It was just kind of a dumping ground. We did nothing. There were places called quiet rooms that were really never quiet. I don't know. but it seemed like someplace you would put, you know, an animal, you know, and it's like a cage, you know, and that was very disturbing for me. So I said, you know, I have to get out of here. So I reached out to a couple people, and I was very into the arts. So I ended up going to enter into Duke Ellington School of the Arts, which is in Washington, D.C., and that was actually my senior year, and that's unheard of. So I went in, and people asked me all types of questions, you know, who do you know famous, and all this, you know, who are your parents, and things like that. You know, and I was just determined to get out. So for me, it was the high school, and that they really, and to this day, the Alumni Association, they really helped me out. They actually hired me for a lot of things. And there was also a job opportunity called Youth Business Initiative. It was a program that teaches you how to be business leaders and things like that, you know, everything within the business. And we went to a lot of places, experienced a lot of things. One of them was, it was partnered through Outward Bound. So the program the year before, we were youth and kind of being taught how to do these things. And then the year after, we started becoming, you know, kind of big brothers, mentors, and teachers. So you went overseas to develop a curriculum to come back and teach the youth on how to survive throughout the system. So that was very big, and to this day, I still do that. So.
Excellent. I have one more question, and then we'll open up to the audience, both here and electronically, for additional questions. Question goes like this. You're changing your stories, clearly. It makes me proud to hear what you've accomplished. But there's another part that has to happen to change your story, and that goes when you're ready to transition to the employment market. And as we think internationally, there's a great challenge with youth unemployment today, problems of transitioning from school to work. What are your thoughts about that? What are some of the things you think might be very helpful and supportive to help you make that final transition? Tony or Jalissa, great.
Yeah. I think a big part of it is just kind of the career building skills, the resume, the interviewing, the how to shake a hand, the how to look in an eye, the branding yourself. Not a lot of people can just spit off the top of their head 5 adjectives about them that an employer actually wants to hear. So just conversations about who are you, what do you want to do, how to present yourself, because we don't have the mother that, you know, people actually have, or the grooming that, you know, normal kids have. We just need that extra push, and I think that will kind of help us initiate our way into the job market.
Thanks, Jalissa. Tony?
I was actually about to say 5 things off the top of my head, just in case. Before I do say that, yes, I am graduating and I am looking for a job, and I do have business cards. So just in case you guys are wondering, I would definitely say that transition into the job market is crazy. You know, I mean, luckily at Rutgers we have career services. I can go and get my resume critiqued, but definitely I can't really say anything more than what she said. Definitely learn how to shake a hand, look people in the eye, being able to market yourself. That is, getting those skills is hard, especially when you don't have that structure to get you there. So I learned off of a lot of mistakes. I just learned off of what I saw other people do, and I realized that's not the right way to do it, so I'm going to try this way. So I would definitely say this transition into the job market is tough, especially given my case. I'm losing all the way. I have a felony. I'm doing bad in the employment look. So learning that you really can't come to college and just go to college, that's something that I really feel like you have to push to all your youth, is that even whether you come from a bad background or not, a 4.0 and no extracurriculars is nothing. I don't respect anyone who says they have a 4.0 and they're not part of any student organizations or anything extracurricular. So pushing that initiative, you push it in high school and they'll do it in college, you know. Had I not been involved with sports and stuff in high school, I probably wouldn't be president of NAACP today, you know. So that transition to the job market is hard, and trust me, it's hard for everybody, but it's even harder when you don't have that person telling you this is the right thing and this is the wrong thing.
Excellent. To the former question, I also worked at the mayor's office, so that's on the resume also. So for me, it's education. Education is very important. A lot of youth don't take that opportunity. You know, millions of dollars are given back because people don't take the opportunity. But I feel like it's very important for the success of people. So education, and even now, I still have difficulty with the education, with the finance piece. You know, as I go to age out, you know, I'm terrified of, you know, will I have the opportunity to go to college, you know, through some type of, you know, scholarship or things like that. And then there's also employment. So.
Great, thank you. Okay, we can now open up from additional questions, and Lori, if you could assist us with that, it'd be very much appreciated. Sure.
Wow, huh? My name is Lori Lutz, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of FedCap, and I am equally honored to be here today and eager to hear what you have to say. We have been compiling questions all morning. For those of you that don't know, there is a little green piece of paper in your packets. Those are comment cards, and if you have a question that you'd like to ask anyone up here, fill them out, and we'll have folks going around and we'll gather them. But I'll begin by just capturing just a few quick comments. If not for college, I'd be in jail. When I left California, California left me. I left a piece of me every time I moved, and I moved more times than my age. These are sentiments for me that will stick for a very, very long time. And so the first question, and this is from the Moore Center, our colleagues in New Hampshire. What was one thing for any of you that a mentor did concretely or an adult did during that first year of college that you think made the difference for you finishing that first year? One thing.
I would say, tell me that I was better than what I was doing.
Tell me that I was better than what I was doing. Anyone? No?
My first year was difficult. So
Your first year.
it
I hear
wasn't
you.
after I got over the
Okay. Second year.
my second year. I think I was on the hill with OFA, and someone told me that this can be your life.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Judge Gray. Oh, Antoine, do you want to answer that? I wasn't sure if you did. No, please, please.
See, my first year, it was difficult because I didn't have support from the people I thought I would have support from. I was still working at the mayor's office, so one of my bosses, he actually encouraged, he was a lawyer, and he went to Vermont Law School, and he encouraged me to do well.
So all of you are saying someone that says, I believe in the best. Okay. So Judge Gray, you're on the bench, and all of us are in awe of how you handle that. What's one thing that you do, and this is, by the way, from LifeShare in Florida, what's one thing that you do from the bench that you think has changed practice?
Well, one thing I do is, as I said earlier, it's very personal for me, and so, you know, I will remind, you know, social workers, lawyers, whomever, that, you know, you're working with real people in real lives, and you have to do the things that you are paid to do and that are necessary for the families. And so, I mean, I don't mince words with folks when they're not doing what they're supposed to do for the children or for the families. And I will share my, you know, my experiences if necessary to push them or nudge them.
Wow, thank you. Okay, another question. And this is for all three of you in whatever order. Was there ever a time, and we sort of talked about this a little bit last night, was there ever a time that you came to have the idea that something special was going to happen to you, that you were just going to succeed?
When I realized that education was the way to end a cycle of dependency, a cycle of failure, cycle of despair. I knew that if I continued on that road, then I would succeed.
Thank you.
I would say it just came as I got the email that I was ready, that I was able to graduate. That was up until then, I really just thought I was in a recurring cycle of nothing. I mean, I know I was advancing, but until I got that email saying, you know, it's time to start declaring what you want on your degree, I was like, wow, I can really do this. I'm about to be a Rutgers graduate, you know? So
Yahoo!
That was my special moment.
Antoine.
For me, it's when I received the acceptance letter to Duke Ellington, I didn't believe it was going to happen. I mean, I tried my best, but, you know, someone getting accepted in their sophomore year, you know, in high school is not, that's unheard of. You know, you have to be, you know, a child of so-and-so and so-and-so. And I didn't have a very good educational background because I haven't really been in kind of real high school, just kind of alternative school. So that was the moment for me.
Thank you. So there are obviously a lot of social workers in the audience because I just got about 5 questions that said almost the same thing, just in a little bit different vernacular. How can I, as a person working with young folks, do it differently, make a difference, interact with you in your educational environment, in the Child Welfare Agency, wherever I might interact with you, how can I do it differently to change the outcomes?
With my experience with social workers, I was not Jaleesa. I was a case file. I was in my 3rd placement and she needed to keep me there. So for anyone who came in contact with me after that, I would just tell them to take that 10 extra minutes. Because really, it takes just a short amount of time for me to realize that you're actually concerned about me. So if you ask me how I'm doing, how did you sleep last night? How is school going? Not, how was the last placements? We have to keep you here, so how can I keep you here? You ask me about me. You give me that 10 minutes. You give me the courtesy of knowing that I was just taken from my parents, that I don't owe you anything, that I shouldn't be grateful to have a placement. If you realize that and you talk to me as such, I feel that you could have made a difference. And I feel like that's how a lot of youth feel. They feel like they're just a number.
Thank you.
For me, I've kind of always been, you know, this independent person and, you know, very thoughtful, know how to navigate through things. But so that was kind of my downfall. So I was kind of one of these leaders, and everyone saw me as such. So no one really took the time to have a conversation with me like, okay, you know, you're doing fine, you know, you're doing this. You have it all by yourself, you have it figured out. But to me, that felt like they were ignoring the fact that I was trying. You know, they were going and paying attention to people who were disruptive, going to jail, things like that. So along the way, I felt very discouraged. I'm like, you know,
yeah.
I don't, you know, I still, yes, I have, you know, some of it put together, but I'm still young, I'm still learning. I still see myself progressing forward. So, you know, doing that. And then when you're in a home, I've complained about certain things within homes and saying, okay, you know, the parents not providing this, not providing that. And the first solution was, okay, well, where do you want to move? And I felt like that's the easy way out, but that doesn't solve anything, you know, because the problem will still be there no matter who's there. You know, you need to address the issue. And I've never, no matter how difficult the situation was, I never really wanted to move away from a home. So I feel like, you know, kind of being more thoughtful and not just kind of taking the easy way out and kind of figure out a problem and invest in time.
Thank you. Amen, right? So now, we talked about the idea that this is about changing the story. How are you feeling about yourself today? What are the strengths? I felt that. Tony, somehow I knew that.
I feel good. You know,
You feel good.
This is probably the largest crowd I've been able to actually reach out to, and hopefully you guys take a lot of what we're saying home. So I feel really good. You know, I've been humble so long that it's good to, you know, feel a little,
Child welfare advocacy has always been kind of at the forefront of my consciousness. I knew at a young age that I don't want anyone to experience the same things I have. So with that being said, I've been doing speaking to crowds, speaking to youth, interacting with people so that they know kind of what I've been through and what's not working. So I feel like in doing that, I am touching people. I am making a difference. I am planting a seed in someone's head that they need to change something about something. So I think knowing that, it kind of gives me a sense of purpose, and it furthers that sense of purpose. Like the youth that's born 10 years from now that just happens to end up in the child welfare system for whatever the purpose may be, she's not going to struggle. She's not going to suffer. She's not going to be 22 years old and not knowing where she's going to end up, not knowing where she's going to be when she turns 23. Wow. So I think that just kind of deepens my passion for life.
Wow, thank you.
Today I feel good. I feel like I'm looking good, you know, put on a nice suit and tie. I don't see anyone else in the room with this tie on, so. So, you know, so I feel good. But at the same time, I guess it's kind of a downfall, but not really. I never feel like enough is enough, or I feel like I'm at the end. I always feel like even when you're at the top, you can go higher and keep progressing. So, you know, with that, you know, yes, I have, you know, many accomplishments and things like that, but I always feel like, you know, I can reach a higher level. And, you know, I'm still would like help with that, you know, because I don't know everything, you know, so, you know, developing different perspectives from different people and talking to different people. So, and I've been doing public speaking, well, since I was 14, I've been speaking a lot with Roque Gerald, many places with the mayor, where the mayor has spoken and things like that. So.
It's evident that you've all done public speaking. You're just great at it. In fact, one person wrote on their response, "Everything that you've said is forever emblazoned in my mind."
Who said that?
You
wow.
bet. Whoever said that.
I want to tweet about that.
Put a nod out.
It's a nice quote.
So you have said in a variety of different ways, and I think different individuals said it, that we need to go to you to ask, what should services and programs look like? And I think there's probably about 9 questions in here that ask that variation on a theme. So if you were going to be king or queen of the world, and you were going to devise systems for kids so that they didn't end up the way you had to struggle, what would they look like? What would they consist of?
As I said yesterday at dinner, and this is something you guys can take back to your local areas, exposure creates ambition. As she said with her opera, her terrible experience at the opera, she knew that opera wasn't for her because she was exposed to opera. How can I know what is good unless I'm exposed to it? How can I know that I want to be a lawyer until I meet an attorney who tells me the woes of being an attorney? You know, so that program initiatives. A lot of what I see in a lot of child welfare systems is that you guys are pumping a lot of funds into things that you know are failing, but you don't know where else to matriculate it to. You can matriculate it to putting us on a board to consult us. Youth advisory boards are great, and, you know, I feel like we've been very effective. And with that being said, hi, Jessica. You know, you know, she actually came to one of our meetings, and I was like, whoa, we got one of the higher ups coming to our meetings, you know. That program initiatives is start connecting with the people who are willing to come back. You know, I missed work and class for this event. I am willing to sacrifice to come out and speak to help you guys out. And I believe I say that for all of us. You know, we are really here to help. Consult us, and then you'll be able to really understand why or how you should connect to your other youth.
Thanks, Tony.
I concur with Tony, but I will also kind of emphasize the interpersonal relationships. The mentorship matches, some fail, some don't. We may find that one special person who's going to bear with us through the name calling and the stepping on toes and pulling hair. But if we're not exposed to those people, there's no way we can make those connections. And with those connections come our sense of self and purpose and security and connections to other people who have other resources. And I think a saying is, it's not about what you know, it's who you know. That is so true. So I do feel like if we just make a bigger gateway of letting you know more people, we can do more damage.
Thanks, Jaleesa. Antoine.
I think it's a combination of what both Tony and Jaleesa said. Also, you know, people that matter saying you matter. You know, so if you know if you had all your employees meet President Obama and say you're going to make it, productivity would be up 1,000% the next day. I guarantee it. Right? So people coming down and saying that, you know, like Roque Gerald. Said to me, I didn't know who was the head, and I just kind of fell into that position, just kind of being me. So people, saying you matter, and also it's a child welfare system in Africa. They have group homes, things like that. It's not the best, but they offer children. So when they emancipate from the system, a place to come back and call home. So even if they're not your biological people, these people you've grown up for years and years and years, you can come back and say, hey, how you doing? Or, Happy New Year's, things like that. So having, somewhere where you can, meet up, something like that.
Yeah. So we've heard a lot of themes. I think embedded in every one of those strong recommendations was the ability for me to connect with individuals that see me as invaluable in their life. And I think as we're constructing programs, that's got to be core, that's got to be centered. We heard that a lot. Now, this is going to be to you, Bill. And the question was posed in a couple of ways by individuals, that sometimes there's this, it was phrased to, there's these professional boundaries that we are expected to fall within. And that implies a certain way that I am with the youth on my caseload. And in fact, the individual said that Judge Gray said somebody went to a basketball game. I don't even know if I have the right to go to a basketball game of someone on my caseload. So the question that was posed was this: how do I have that kind of connection and still maintain that professional social work boundary that I'm taught in my undergraduate and graduate programs?
It's a very challenging question in many ways, and I think if we, of us who run agencies and organizations, if we could strike a balance in those boundaries that still permits and facilitates a kind of interaction and connection that these young folks have spoken about today was important, but does not exceed the line and go over the boundary. And that's a very difficult thing to do. I think it needs to be adjusted based on setting, what type of agency we are. And I think managers and administrators who are thoughtful may create sanction opportunities that bend the boundaries a little bit and provide the opportunity to learn from the wisdom of connections and importance that we've heard today from the young people. I just want to also say, while I have a moment to do it, I want to thank everybody on our panel today, not just for your courage in sharing your stories today and giving us insight, but you have paid it forward. You have paid it forward in many ways. That people listening here and internationally will make it better over time for kids who have encountered the same circumstances you have. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you. Another question that was posed was this. I don't know if any of you saw it, but on 60 Minutes about a month and a half ago, there was this interesting segment that talked about the fact that increasingly the best internships, the most meaningful internships, are unpaid. And therefore, children of affluent families are going to these incredible, meaningful, exciting internships because they can afford to do it because they're not paid. Their families are helping them. But increasingly, kids without means are experiencing less meaningful internships because they have to go to something that affords them something. And so the question that I want to pose, and I'm going to pose it to FedCap CEO Christine McMahon, is this. What do you say as a person that employs thousands and hires and works with businesses that businesses can do to really change meaningful internships, to advance meaningful internships for kids in care?
That's a great question, and I think to answer it, I'll answer it two ways. One, if anyone has any doubt about the success and the contributions these individuals can make to our communities, to our businesses, wake up, because this is who we are talking about here, and this is the face of the population for whom these internships are needed. And I think one of the things we need to do as a system is find ways and build framework to help fill a room like this with business people who are hiring so that they can hear these stories. I think once we do that, once we help educate and take responsibility for educating employers and CEOs of businesses, I don't think we'll have any trouble creating meaningful opportunities for children in our care. And I think we've heard concretely and definitively from all of these individuals and the thousands of children that are in care that opportunity and exposure and a variety of experiences are critically necessary. And I certainly see businesses not only being that resource, but wanting to step to the plate. I kind of think of it like a weightlifting bar. There's a tremendous amount of people looking for this, and there's a tremendous need in our business community for these individuals to make a difference. And what we need really is to think carefully about how a framework can be built to make that match. And I think that's the responsibility of our system, and I think worthy of some thought and conversation. So.
Okay, another question, and there was 3 or 4 of these. I think, Jaleesa, you said that no way, no how were you going to go to counseling during that period that you were sort of angry in care, probably in your junior, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior years in high school. But the question is posed by several individuals in the audience: how could we help kids see the value of counseling? How could we make that something that they think is worthwhile? Because it could be helpful.
Judge Gray alluded to the fact that she knew a shrink who had innovative ways of talking to you. Had I had one of those shrinks who had innovative ways of talking to you, then I probably would have talked to her. Instead, I'm putting it in a room with a sandbox and a mini freight and told that I need to tell her how I feel, but I don't really know who she is. She's not really making an effort to get to know me. She just wants to know my deepest, darkest secrets. And I've been moved around from placement to placement. I've had siblings come and go. Social workers change every other week. I don't know if I leave here, when I go back home, my things are going to be on the line. So I feel like if I was treated as any other human being, foster youth, we don't want to be ostracized because of our parents' mistakes. We don't want to be made to feel like we're different, or we have defects, or we have disorders because we were born into a situation that we had no control over. So I feel like if we were treated like anyone else, if we were given the opportunity, I'm pretty sure that I would have opened up. If I just happened to be walking down Potomac and talking about the pretty sunset, and I was like, yeah, saw the sunset. I didn't get to sit yesterday because my foster parent locked me in a closet. Like, those are the kind of things that I feel would have made me more comfortable to go to therapy.
Thank you. Antoine, please.
One of the things that I find that helps is therapy through the arts. So that really helps out and opens people up. So
thank you.
Suggestion.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. That was perfect, because that's what that was one of our projects in the Youth Advisory Board with art therapy. We suggested that because we realized that that wasn't one of the things that was implemented as heavily as it should. So art therapy is definitely critical. You know, I would honestly say a lot of my deepest secrets came out of my poem, not sitting in a room looking at somebody and telling them how I felt. It was me writing how I felt and some people drawing, painting. But one thing I did want to say, I feel like maybe you guys put a little bit too much burden on yourself. It's not always just you guys, that makes us not want to go to the therapy. It's also at home. It's like sometimes it's just going home and realizing that you're different. Then on top of that, you guys telling us, oh, well, you have this therapy thing. Now it's two different entities telling me I'm different. And then I go to school, the last entity I have, and I feel different. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want your therapy.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I don't know between the three of you how many foster homes that you've been in, but I'm guessing it's between 30 and 40. And numerous members of the audience and our streaming asked this question. And maybe the same question just posed in a different way, but it's specific to the foster parent environment. What happened in those environments that was great, that should be replicated for every single person going into care? And what are the things that happened, just one or two, that should never happen to anybody ever again?
Well, one of the things that happened to me is that I was split from my brother, my one and only sibling that I knew. So that was a disaster. And now we're further apart than ever, and that happened, at 10, 11 years old. So that was I don't know why to this day why we were split up. I moved from my home because I was uncomfortable there, said I wanted to leave, so I left. And social worker said that my brother would be following behind me a couple of days later. I said, okay, you promise? She said, yes, and he never came. I lost contact with him. He didn't have a cell phone and things like that, so I didn't know where he was. So that's one of the things that should never happen.
Thank you, Antoine. Thank you. What should happen? What's one thing that should? One thing that did happen that was great?
In one of my placements, my foster mother had a really big family. And because I had none, I was like, this is great. This is awesome. So we had Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas dinners for the year or two that it did last. It was awesome. And that's, I think that speaks to the fact that I had the opportunity to create more relationships. So there was a possibility for permanency, or a possibility for gaining that adult who would have supported me through college or whenever. But without that opportunity, I never would have known. So that's definitely one thing that should happen.
That's great. Sort of you begin to build your extended family. That's wonderful. Thank you, Antoine, Jaleesa. Tony.
I'll give you one that did and one that should never. What did happen was, and it took a while, it took too long, but it happened nonetheless, is around 17, my foster parent realized, they tell you we have to go through all these checks and balances for you to enjoy the basic freedoms of going to a school dance. Go, and we'll deal with the rebuttal from the caseworker later if that comes, So being able to give me some breathing room, that happened, and I guess that's why I still go back and appreciate them, because they finally realized, listen, Tony he's just as prone to getting in trouble as anybody else, but not anymore. So let him go. And one thing that should never happen, never, ever, 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 is restricting that child's contact list of who they can contact. You can't tell me that, I've been in this system since I was 3 years old, you can't tell me that I can't talk to my mother because she didn't show up to court. I don't care. That's not for you to decide. I'm a thinking, sentient being. I want to talk to her, and if I feel as though she's doing me harm, then I will make that judgment as to I don't want to talk to her. Don't tell me that I can't talk to any of my family because until I'm 18, it's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
One thing that should happen, one of the first homes I was in was huge. I think it was about 5 floors plus the attic, and we always had people over from church. We always hosted banquets, and that was a separate part of the house. But I was also exposed to different things. We traveled a lot, and that's how I developed a love for photography. Started with a little pink film camera, and I was laughed at. I was definitely laughed at. So But that started because my brother and I received a basketball court for Christmas. Kids came over from church, dunked on it. You know, it wasn't a sturdy court and broke it. So the week after, we went into the attic and started searching for things, and I found this pink camera that we went on the trip, I think, to Disney World, and the pictures came out great. So I was verbally supported, but I wasn't financially supported, so that kind of dropped off. But that was a great thing to be exposed to that. So.
It's been the beginning of your dreams, your aspirations. Wow. So now, at the end, you experience this opportunity to talk to professionals and people that really care about this issue. You also have the opportunity to talk to your peers, kids that are currently in the system. And let's end with that statement. What is it, or that question, what is it that you would say to a young person, 9th, 10th grade, that just simply doesn't see a future? And they're struggling, and they're hurting.
Listen, man, and this is in the first person as I'm really talking to them. Don't believe that you can't do anything. You know, I can't, as a foster care youth, we come in at the bottom of the totem pole statistically, so our goal should be to achieve what the normal kids do, so that we can appreciate it that much more. Embrace your life and say, you know what, this is not for me. And there is opportunities, and there are people that care. You just have to keep on going. You know, the struggle of being a human being is to try to find greater knowledge, try to find greater resources. If I could paraphrase Aristotle, is that he said the happier you are is more of how educated you are. You know, and understanding that maybe you don't have to go straight to college. Maybe you can go into the Navy or in the military or pick up a trade, but putting yourself lower in the statistics is illogical. You know, always try to move forward. And since this is my last statement, if you guys have not watched the movie Pay It Forward, you should watch it. It really is inspirational. So that's what I would say to a youth, is definitely embrace, take all your failure, watch everybody who failed, and then do the complete opposite of what they did.
Thanks, Tony. Jaleesa?
In as few words as possible.
Yes, that deserves an applause.
In as few words as possible, I would probably say, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning.
Can you say that again?
Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. I'm very spiritual, so I do believe that we all go through our dark days and depression and failure, but it's going to get better.
Amen. Antoine.
I will first share something with them from me, that my ambition comes from me wanting to escape my statistical fate. So you're already kind of statistically set up for failure when you're born into certain situations. So I would say, if you feel like you're at the bottom, you can't go any further down, so why not try? You know.
To go on. Thank you. Thank you. Judge Gray, what would you say? What do you say every day?
These guys are
so eloquent.
Yes, they really are, and I'm so, you know, like Jaleesa, I am spiritual, and actually my husband, the second love of my life, my son is my first. He always says, when he learned of our story, he always says, you know, the stone that the builder rejected, and that becomes the foundation, you know, of all things. And so, you know, but to my kids, you know, I mean, I let me just back up and say one thing about social workers engaging youth outside, or any professional engaging youth outside of that professional piece and the boundaries. The only thing you have to really remember is you can't talk about the case. You can't resolve the issues with the case with the child. So if you're going to their basketball game to watch them, or taking them to some event, you can't talk about, the case. And so I step outside. My son's grown, so I do things with the kids on my calendar. I'll show up at the group home. I go to their graduations. I take them places. And I will tell them, my story and the obstacles and the challenges. And they don't end when you age out, and they don't end when you turn 25, and they don't end when you turn 30, and they don't end. And so they have to understand that there will always be something, and that they have to dig deep inside of themselves. There's so much good in them, and they are so capable, and they just have to stop beating up on themselves, blaming themselves for things that, simply are not their fault. They are loved, they're lovable, and we just need to work through it. And I really try to find what is their interest, because again, I don't know what the person, Ms. Bradley, saw in me, but she saw something.
I think we have a hint of what she might have seen in you.
So that's basically what I do. Just tell them anything is possible, and they're capable.
Bill.
This is just struck by listening today to see in our young people such enormous potential to achieve and accomplish things in their lives. And if my closing advice to be as a social worker who's practiced for almost 40 years now is we should never fall victim or practice the soft bigotry of lowered expectations for individuals we serve.
Amen. Thank you so much for all your great questions. Let's hear it for the panel and the moderator one more time.
Up for the closing remarks of today's event, we want to make just a special presentation to Rutgers. And I want to be clear that one of the themes today was trying to help us all understand things that matter to the children in our care. And I think that's really an important piece of changing the story, is to really find out what matters and what matters to the children for whose lives we are all concerned. And I was thinking about that as we were speaking today, and I was thinking about how there are individuals who do what they need to do, they do what they're supposed to do, and sometimes they even do what matters. And I was thinking about how important it is to come up with the things that really just make all the difference. And that's what we should all be striving for, and I think that is what we're striving for. And in bringing Rutgers up here today, I really felt as though, this is an institution that has not just talked the talk, but walked the walk. The action of partnering with us and being here today and opening up their space and helping us put this event on is really how the story is going to change. And so for all of it, we have some Rutgers alumni in the room to boot, so that's just an added thing. I want to just invite Kathleen Potic, the Dean, here today up to accept this recognition of the bold vision and action to ensure that higher education plays a leading role in addressing national crisis of disconnected youth. And we present this certificate to Rutgers, not only for what they do every day in the classrooms, but for coming here today and taking a different look and helping build a different story for the children in our care. And so please, thank you. Come up and accept this.
Thank you so very much, FedCap. We are just so honored and privileged to be a part of this partnership, and I want to accept this certificate on behalf of the faculty, staff, students, alumni, wherever you are of the school. I will not ever look at this in the School of Social Work and not think that we have a responsibility to create these bold solutions. Thank you.
And now to close our event, I would like to invite the CEO of the Moore Center, our partner in this event today. Rutgers, FedCap, and the Moore Center really planned this event together. And as we've mentioned many times during the session today, there's groups of people in New Hampshire meeting as we speak and who participated in the question and answers. And so I'd like to invite Paul to come up and provide some closing remarks.
Thank you, Christine. It is now time to wrap things up, and I stand here as living proof that they don't always save the best for the last. But it's been a real honor to be part of this wonderful collaboration. This morning's symposium was designed to explore bold solutions to helping youth find jobs, open pathways to education, and develop lifelong self-sufficiency. And I think everyone who participated did an incredible job at doing just that. Now it will rest on each one of us to actually turn these bold ideas into actions that will improve the system and the lives of the people the system was designed to serve. I want to thank Kathleen Potok and Andy Germick and all the good people at Rutgers for making today possible and for offering to fix our parking tickets. I wonder how the judge felt about that. I also want to thank Chris McMahon and her staff from FedCap for being the catalyst that set this morning's program into motion. I want to say hello to all my colleagues at the Moore Center and all the folks in New Hampshire and really folks from literally around the world who have been with us this morning by video. And most of all, I want to thank everyone who not only shared their insights, knowledge, and hope, but who also shared their own personal experiences. I think you'd agree that it's the personal sharing that made the biggest difference this morning. And with that in mind, I want to close with a very short story. It's a story about a guy walking down the street who falls into a deep hole. Try as he might, the walls are steep and he can't seem to find his way out. Just then he sees a doctor walking by and he calls out to him, "Hey doc, I'm stuck. Can you help me out?" The doctor scribbles out a prescription on his pad and throws it down to the man, and then continues on his way. A moment later, he sees a priest walking by. "Father," he says, "I'm stuck in this hole. Can you help me out?" The priest says a prayer for the young man and continues on his way. Exasperated and nearly giving up hope, he sees an old friend walking by. "Bill," he says, "I'm stuck in this hole and no one can help me out." Without hesitating, Bill jumps in the hole with him. "What are you doing?" the man asks. "Now we're both in the hole." "Yes," Bill replies, "but I've been here before, and I know the way out." We are all grateful for the experience and hope offered today by those of you who have been here. And now it's up to each of us to continue to find our way out. Thanks again for being with us, and have a good rest of your day.
I have just two quick things to announce to you all. That the continuing education hour certificates are available outside the room for you. And for those of you watching us on the live stream, you can also get in touch with us for continuing education hours. We have a form that we can send you can fill out. And please fill out your evaluation form both here and those of you watching us. We would appreciate having those filled out. Thank you very much.